Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's story will take us to Pelumpang, a suburban district of Kota Kinabalu in the state of Sabah, Malaysia. In late 2021, while the city was under lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, behind the locked doors of a luxury apartment, a young domestic worker took her final breaths alone, in pain and in utter humiliation. No one truly knew what the young woman had gone through until the videos on her phone were finally unlocked. So, who was responsible for the pain inflicted on her body? And what secrets were hidden behind that door, still unknown to the outside world? In this video, let's take a closer look at this shocking case to uncover yet another story of the terrifying decay of human morality. And if you believe this story deserves to be heard by more people so they can stay alert, please help us by sharing this video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the gripping cases we cover next. Thank you all so much for your support. On the night of December 13th, 2021, Mohammed Amri Yunus, a man living at the Amber Tower apartment, came running to his sister's nearby house in a state of panic. He told his sister that he had just returned from a few days away and found his domestic worker in distress. He urgently pleaded with her to take him to the police station immediately. Seeing her younger brother in an unusually terrified state, the sister quickly drove him to the Pelumpang District Police Headquarters. At 9 p.m., Amri arrived at the station and immediately reported that he had just returned from a vacation in the town of Kundasing and discovered the family's domestic worker lying motionless on the bathroom floor. The duty officers promptly notified the investigation team and dispatched officers to the scene. When police arrived at the third-floor apartment of Amber Tower, the scene that unfolded was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. A young woman lay on her back in the bathroom area, lifeless for quite some time. She was dressed only in black pants and underwear, no shirt. What was most horrifying were the marks on her body, which indicated she had endured severe and repeated beatings. Her head, face, shoulders, legs, and arms were covered in bruises and injuries, while her entire back was blistered, as if she had been scalded with boiling water. Although the three-bedroom apartment appeared generally tidy and well-kept, with no signs of forced entry from the outside, police discovered bloodstains scattered across the walls, cabinets, and floor of both the bathroom and bedroom. Even seasoned investigators were shaken by the disturbing scene they witnessed. Clearly, this was neither a natural death nor a simple accident. It was a brutal murder that subjected the unfortunate victim to excruciating suffering. Upon further examination, the coroner confirmed that the victim was around 30 years old, approximately 16 meters tall, and had likely died 2 to 3 days before being discovered, somewhere between December 10th and 11th. Both eyebrows were completely gone, and her short black hair was uneven, with several bald patches, as if someone had violently shaved her. Head on the victim's left wrist, there was still a black bracelet, stained in places. The direct cause of death was identified as soft tissue necrosis leading to sepsis, a result of severe burns and festering wounds all over her body. The victim had also sustained multiple other injuries. Her nose was broken, her eyes were swollen, and her lips were badly bruised. In addition, her body showed signs of deep puncture wounds, sharp lacerations, and large gashes likely caused by a blunt object. In particular, the entire area of the victim's shoulders, arms, and upper back was severely infected, with pus-filled abscesses and muscle tissue necrosis caused by extensive skull burns. Both thighs and ankles also showed open, untreated wounds that had developed into skin ulcers and abscesses, leading to widespread infection. Medical experts concluded that with injuries this severe, if left untreated, as they clearly were, death was inevitable. The autopsy report also revealed that 6 of Afiyah's front teeth had been broken. Notably, the 2 upper left incisors were fractured close to the root, with the surrounding alveolar bone cracked and the gum tissue torn. These were not injuries consistent with a fall or accidental trauma. Instead, The damage strongly suggested that someone had gripped the teeth forcefully and either snapped them or attempted to extract them using non-medical tools. The torn gums showed no signs of healing, indicating that the brutal assault on her mouth occurred shortly before her death and possibly contributed to it. At this point, the forensic doctor proposed a chilling hypothesis. It appeared the perpetrator had used pliers in an attempt to forcibly extract the victim's teeth while she was still alive but failed. This resulted in shattered teeth and fractured jawbones. The level of pain, as the doctor described, would have been a 10 out of 10 excruciating and unbearable, especially since the victim had not been given any form of anesthesia. Unlike during a dental procedure, hearing this, even the seasoned officers present felt a cold shiver down their spines. Who could inflict such unspeakable cruelty on a woman? What's particularly tragic is that this woman was working as a domestic helper in the very home where she died. Her name was Nur Afiyah Dang Daman, born in 1993 into a Bajau ethnic family in Bulukumba, Indonesia. Her parents later migrated to Malaysia, which allowed Afiyah to obtain Malaysian citizenship. Although she continued to carry the cultural roots of her Indonesian heritage, during her childhood, Afiyah was sent back to Indonesia by her father to complete her middle school education, and only returned to Malaysia in 2010. In her 20s, Afiyah married Askari, a young man from the same hometown who had also moved to Malaysia to build a better life. Together, they hoped to earn enough to send money back and support both of their families. Afiyah was described as gentle, hardworking, and resilient. Due to financial hardship, in 2021, she accepted a job as a domestic helper in Kota Kinabalu, a place far from where her husband was working. The full-time job meant Afiyah had little to no personal time, working from early morning until late at night to care for the household and the employer's 3 young children. When the pandemic broke out, travel became increasingly difficult. Afiyah had to set aside her wish to return home and visit her parents. Instead, she agreed to remain in her employer's home to maintain a COVID-safe bubble, hoping that once the situation improved, she would be granted extended leave. At first, Afiyah kept in touch with her husband over the phone. She was quiet by nature and rarely complained. Her husband, Askari, recalled that during each call, Afiyah would always say the job was fine, though tiring with 3 young children, and that her employers treated her well. Perhaps she didn't want him to worry, but Askari sensed that his wife was becoming increasingly tense. Their calls became less frequent, until they suddenly stopped altogether in mid-2021. Askari was worried but had no idea where to look for his wife, as she had been working in someone else's household. For 5 long months, he waited anxiously for any news. Then, in early January 2022, Malaysian police called to inform him that his wife had died at her employer's home. The devastating news left the husband in stunned silence. He immediately flew to Sabah to assist with the identification. At the morgue, upon seeing his wife's body covered in countless injuries, to the point of being nearly unrecognizable, Askari almost collapsed. It wasn't until his eyes rested on the familiar bracelet on her left wrist that Askari, in anguish, confirmed it was indeed Nur Afiyah. The bracelet, a keepsake she always wore, became the final silent witness to the life of an unfortunate woman. Back at the crime scene, the forensics team found traces of blood on multiple surfaces, from drawers, doors, and the wardrobe to the bedroom walls and the bathroom wall. However, the faint smell of bleach still lingered in the air, clearly indicating that some cleaning had taken place, but the traces couldn't be completely erased. The police also seized several suspicious items at the scene: a black and yellow pair of pliers, an ancient electric hair clipper, a metal rod, and 2 wooden sticks that were stored in the closet and out on the balcony. In addition, there was a pair of black rubber gloves with the word Ninja printed on them, a bottle of Cocorex bleach, a bottle of diluted black metal polishing solution, a maroon-colored E3 electric kettle, along with a plastic cup and a scrubbing sponge. All of these items were found neatly arranged in the house, as if the perpetrator had deliberately organized the scene. These items were immediately suspected to be the weapons used in the crime. The pliers could have been used to extract teeth, while the hair clipper explained why the victim's head had been completely shaved. The wooden sticks and metal rod matched the scratches and bruises on the body. As for the kettle and plastic cup, they were likely used to boil and pour hot water, corresponding with the horrific burn marks found on the victim's skin. As for the apartment itself, it was a 3-bedroom unit. According to initial statements, aside from the victim, the home was also occupied by the owners, Mohammed Ambri Yunus, 40, and Etika Siti Nurashikin Mad Sulong, 33, along with their 3 young children, one around 3 to 4 years old, and a pair of twins, approximately 2 years old. However, at the time the body was discovered, both Ambri and Etika claimed they had been away from home between December 11th and 13th, 2021, on vacation at the Hidden Hill Resort in Kundasang, a highland tourist area about 90 kilometers from Kota Kinabalu. They insisted that the victim had been healthy and alone at home when they left, and that upon their return, they found her dead in the bathroom. With no clear explanation to verify their alibi, the police went to Hidden Hill Resort and confirmed that Ambri and Etika, along with their children, had indeed been there from December 11th to December 13th. At first glance, it appeared they had a solid alibi. However, the police did not rule them out immediately and began considering another possibility. Could it be that the family had inflicted the fatal injuries on the victim and then deliberately gone on vacation to create an alibi? After all, there were no signs of forced entry at the scene. The apartment had been securely locked. The building was also under strict security surveillance, and no unfamiliar individuals were seen entering or leaving during that time. Moreover, the fact that multiple suspected weapons were found at the scene further supported the theory that this crime had been committed in an environment familiar to the perpetrator, rather than in an unfamiliar setting. Faced with such tragic evidence, the police became all the more determined to uncover the truth. They shifted their focus to investigating the electronic devices of Ambri and Etika. The digital forensic analysis quickly uncovered the most shocking evidence of the case: video clips and images stored on the couple's phones, capturing the brutal assaults inflicted on the domestic worker. The recovered files showed that the victim, Afiyah, was brutally assaulted and tortured over several days, and the perpetrator deliberately recorded these crimes as a form of amusement. One video even showed an unidentified hand holding a plastic cup, pouring a liquid over Afiyah as she screamed in agony. Another video captured the victim being dragged across the floor, causing her to moan in pain and plead for mercy. There were also close-up images showing someone using pliers to clamp the victim's mouth, followed immediately by a heart-wrenching scream. These undeniable pieces of evidence enraged the investigators. The cruel perpetrator not only tortured the victim deliberately over an extended period, but also wanted to preserve their horrific deeds in a disturbingly sick way. The investigation continued by examining the motive behind the crime. The police found no signs of theft or major financial disputes between Ambri and Etika and the domestic worker. However, testimony from Ambri's sister revealed that Ambri's wife, Etika, often argued with the domestic worker over childcare duties. About 3 months before the incident, Ambri said the domestic worker had problems and was injured, but he bought bandages himself to dress her wounds because Etika refused to let her go to the hospital. Ambri explained that his wife was afraid that taking the domestic worker out would expose the situation, so she decided to keep her at home and treat her injuries herself. Clearly, there had been ongoing conflicts between the mistress of the house and the domestic worker, and the couple had a history of abusing the helper even before the murder occurred. The fact that Afiyah had been injured, but the employer's family concealed it and treated her wounds themselves without allowing her to see a doctor, was a serious sign of confinement and deprivation of the worker's rights. As the physical, forensic, and digital evidence gradually came together, the picture of the truth became clearer. In November 2022, after nearly a year of investigation, the police had collected testimonies from a total of 15 witnesses, including forensic staff, outside witnesses, and relatives of the suspects. The extensive case file was then handed over to the Sabah State Prosecutor's Office on December 29, 2021. The case was officially brought to a preliminary hearing at the Kota Kinabalu Court. Then, on November 17, 2022, both defendants, Ambri and Etika, were formally charged with murder under Section 302 of the Malaysian Penal Code. Based on the collected evidence, the investigators and prosecutors reconstructed the crime committed by the wicked couple in detail. The heartbreaking story began in early December 2021. At that time, Nur Afiyah had been working as a domestic helper for the family of Etika and Ambri for over a year. The 28-year-old woman was responsible for caring for 3 children, especially the pair of twins just over 1 year old, who often cried a lot. From there, tensions gradually built up. The mistress of the house, Etika, was reportedly unhappy with how Afiyah cared for the children and scolded her multiple times. Neighbors said they heard quiet arguments inside the house, but no one thought it was serious, assuming it was just the employer scolding the helper. Afiyah probably lived in fear for a long time, especially after she was cut off from contact with her family starting mid-2021, around early December. It's unclear what sparked the rage, but what happened next went far beyond any limits of humanity. According to a video recorded on December 8, 2021, which the police recovered, that evening Afiyah was forced to lie on the floor while the couple, Ambri and Etika, poured a cup of boiling water directly onto her bare back. She screamed and writhed in pain, but the cruel perpetrators laughed mockingly at the camera, their laughter echoing through the video. Another clip showed Afiyah's mouth covered and her hands tightly tied behind her back. At that moment, a pair of pliers was used against her mouth. She cried out in pain, revealing the torment she was enduring. As a result, she was injured and blood began to flow, staining the floor. The victim suffered unbearable pain. From December 8th to December 10th, Afiyah had to live through hell right at her workplace. New wounds kept piling up on old ones. Both Etika and Ambri continued to deny her proper food and medical care, refusing to take her to a hospital despite the severity of her injuries. They feared the truth would come out, so they only gave her superficial treatment themselves. A witness even testified that Ambri had gone to a pharmacy to buy bandages and antiseptic ointment. But of course, those efforts were like pouring salt into the sea. Afiyah's body grew weaker and weaker, running a high fever, with her burn wounds becoming severely infected. And despite all this, the perpetrator seemingly did not stop. New bruises showed she had been struck in the abdomen and legs, and there were even signs she had been dragged roughly across the floor. It can be said that in her final hours, Nur Afiyah endured pain both physical and mental, beyond what words can describe. Sometime around December 10th or 11th, Nur Afiyah took her last breath, alone on the cold bathroom floor. Perhaps realizing the victim showed no signs of life, on the morning of December 11th, Ambri and Etika immediately arranged a trip. Before leaving, there were signs that the two cleaned the crime scene with bleach. Once finished, the couple locked the door and casually drove off with their children for a vacation. They stayed at the Hidden Hill Resort from the afternoon of December 11th to December 13th. Also, they could later claim, "We were away from home, and when we returned, we discovered she had passed away." Throughout the investigation, both suspects tried to deny responsibility and blame each other. They insisted that while they were away from home, an intruder might have broken in and killed the helper. But faced with undeniable evidence, especially from phone data, their strategy shifted. Etika implied that her husband was the main perpetrator, and she herself was just a victim forced by him to keep silent. In contrast, Ambri claimed that Etika was hot-tempered and often beat the helper, while he occasionally intervened and even bandaged her wounds. He went further to fabricate a story that on the night of December 13th, he and his wife had an argument, and in anger, Etika lashed out at the helper and then forced him to help cover it up. But these claims were completely inconsistent with the evidence. All the objective evidence, from the videos to the injuries, showed that the couple actively participated together. For example, in some footage, you can hear two voices, one male and one female, at the same time. Or see scenes where one person is holding the camera while the other is attacking the victim. The injuries included signs of violent force typical of a man, such as a broken nose and wounds on the legs, alongside meticulous torment typical of a woman, like targeting the teeth, hair, or using boiling water. Therefore, the prosecution concluded that Ambri and Etika conspired together to commit the murder of Afiyah. This was not a killing in a moment of anger, but a series of deliberate, calculated, and prolonged acts. Their likely goal was to vent their household frustrations and assert power over a lowly worker. This sick and twisted intent became clear in the way they calmly recorded every act of their crime. Notably, when the case was made public in the media, the public was stunned by the identity of the cruel perpetrator. The wife, Etika Siti Nurashikin Maid Sulong, born in 1988, was once known as an intelligent and talented woman. She earned a master's degree in geology from a university in Sabah in 2012 at the age of 24. Etika participated in MasterChef Malaysia Season 2 and made it to the promising top 6. The image of the pretty Sabah girl, skilled in cooking, had once won much favor with the audience. After leaving the competition, Etika married Muhammad Ambri Yunus. She built her own career, becoming an engineer working for the oil and gas Corporation Petronas. By 2021, at the age of 33, Etika was a mother of 3 children. Despite a stable career, she faced the pressure of balancing work and family. An anonymous acquaintance revealed that Etika was somewhat hot-tempered and perfectionistic when it came to taking care of her children. As for Muhammad Ambri Yunus, born in 1981, he was 7 years older than his wife. Ambri used to work in the aviation industry before quitting to become a freelance construction contractor in Kota Kinabalu. Neighbors described him as a quiet man who kept to himself. To outsiders, Ambri and Etika appeared to be a happy middle-class couple. No one could have guessed that beneath that peaceful facade lurked sick and cruel storms. Within the minds of these two seemingly intellectual individuals, the trial unfolded over multiple sessions from late 2022 to mid-2025. 15 prosecution witnesses took the stand one by one, including forensic doctors, investigator Anissa, dental expert Noah Hayati, Ambri's sister, and several other acquaintances. On the defense side, there were no other witnesses besides Ambri and Etika themselves, yet each blamed the other. In court, a notable moment occurred when Etika's lawyer, Rugbeer, requested to play the video of the scalding incident to confront the witnesses. Ambri's sister, upon seeing the video, shuddered and covered her eyes, unable to watch further, admitting she saw a hand pouring the boiling water but couldn't tell whose it was. This video was later replayed by the prosecution in court during the June 2024 session to request the forensic doctor's assessment of the injuries. Immediately, the courtroom fell silent in outrage as the brutal abuse footage was shown publicly. During the trial, prosecutor Desha Raminas described it as a prolonged, savage campaign carried out by the defendants. She emphasized that the victim was just a young woman who had left her hometown to work honestly amid the pandemic, only to be tormented and stripped of basic rights like wages and the chance to visit her family. On the defense side, lawyers Ramzai and Rugbeer tried to save their clients with various arguments. Initially, they challenged the legality of the video evidence and phone data, claiming the police did not follow proper procedures in collecting them. However, the court immediately dismissed this, ruling that the evidence had been collected legally. After that, the two lawyers tried to separate the roles of the two defendants. Lawyer Ramsay, defending Ambre, argued that his client only committed the crime unintentionally and did not deliberately harm the maid. He contended that Ambre had tried to care for and wanted to take the maid to the hospital, but was stopped by his wife. As for Etika, her lawyer Rugbir tried to downplay her client's role, claiming that her husband was the one lying and making up a story to clear himself. Rugbir even requested to play the video to prove that Ambre wasn't seen in it, implying that the person committing the acts might be Etika, not Ambre, but this backfired because the video only showed a gloved hand which could have belonged to either Ambre or Etika. Ultimately, the debate between the prosecutor and the defense lawyers reached a fierce climax. Prosecutor Desa firmly requested the court to impose the death penalty, even though Malaysia abolished mandatory capital punishment in 2023. She argued that this case was exceptionally rare and extremely brutal, thus deserving the highest level of punishment as a deterrent. Meanwhile, the defense continued to plead for leniency, emphasizing that both Ambre and Etika were first-time offenders, had young children, and had shown remorse. The courtroom atmosphere was often tense and suffocating as the judge posed sharp questions about the conflicting defenses between the two accused. Ultimately, all the fabricated excuses failed to overturn the truth. On June 20, 2025, the court delivered its verdict. Judge Lynn Holland declared that both Ambre, 44 years old, and Etika, 37 years old, were guilty of murder under Section 302 of the Penal Code. He emphasized that the four elements constituting the crime had been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, each defendant was sentenced to 34 years in prison, a very harsh sentence, close to the current legal maximum of 40 years. In addition, Ambre was sentenced to receive 12 strokes of the cane. Etika was exempted from corporal punishment because Malaysian law prohibits caning women. Upon hearing the verdict, Ambre lowered his head in stunned silence, while Etika broke down crying right there in the courtroom. The 34-year prison sentence took immediate effect from the day of sentencing. This means that Ambre and Etika will spend almost the rest of their lives behind bars. If they survive, they would be over 70 years old upon release. The judge expressed hope that this sentence would serve as a strong deterrent to anyone contemplating abusing innocent people. The trial concluded with the image of Ambre trudging away under escort, and Etika with reddened eyes, tears streaming down her face as she was led to the prison vehicle. Neither of them issued a direct apology to the victim's family, contrary to what their lawyers had claimed. Meanwhile, the victim's husband, Askari, sat silently in the courtroom, his eyes filled with sorrow as he listened to the court recount the horrific ordeal his wife had endured. After the verdict, he briefly shared with the press, "No matter what the sentence is, my wife cannot come back to life. I only hope no one else has to suffer like she did." From a societal perspective, this case has become a painful symbol of the invisible violence that domestic helpers may endure behind closed doors. Many human rights and labor organizations got involved just a few days before the verdict. On June 16, 2025, the International Domestic Workers Alliance, a coalition of various groups, held a press conference in Kuala Lumpur, citing Afiyah's case. They called on the government to pass more comprehensive laws protecting domestic workers. They emphasized that currently, Malaysia has no specific legislation for domestic workers, while 95% of migrant helpers have no weekly day off, and many suffer from withheld wages or confiscated passports by their employers. These legal loopholes have caused domestic workers like Afiyah to be completely dependent on their employers and socially isolated, making it difficult for them to seek help when abused. Related to this issue, the Malaysian Human Rights Commissioner and the activist group Tenaga Nida have also called for reforms in the domestic worker monitoring system, including requiring employers to allow regular inspections and establishing hotlines to protect workers. So, in your opinion, What more should we do to prevent tragedies like Afiyah's? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And if you think today's content deserves to be heard by more people, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel to continue following other intriguing stories. For now, thank you and see you in the next videos.